I'm ready.
Hi. Hello, this is Degheest, and this is an update for the CERT in Los Altos Hills. I wanted to share the fact that I put together videos on and insights on YouTube that are every 2 weeks on the average. Has had 29,000 views with around 29,000 views with around 600 subscribers. I try to be apolitical, which I think is appreciated. So I got like a 98% like since May. Uh, it's like a Reader Digest. So I basically take the information that's being published and I try to translate this into what does it mean, what can you do for do. And so, take a quick look on YouTube. What I did for today is just to pick some of the most important takeaway of what practical steps you can take here in Los Altos Hills to protect yourself. So, a quick background on me: I've been working in health tech for 40 years, and really starting company in that field with a lot of experience in developing new products, especially in the hospitals. And the launch pulse oximetry, which I hope all of you have at home. If you don't, go get one on Amazon. For $35 to $40. And so I'm also an artist there. So this is my view of COVID, humanity fighting COVID. So let's get the show going. If you're interested there's a link on the website where you can download a keynote search because there's 46 videos. I don't expect you to look at all of them, but there's some keywords there as well as timestamps. So for each of the video. So this is a quick summary of what happened on my last video on last Saturday. We have 96 million cases. Now we've passed $100 million since then over the weekend there. The good news on the US, you can see the US is going down, so is Europe. But we're going to talk about some mutation we need to keep an eye on. So I just pick and choose some of the key slides to get a reality check. The 9 of the 10 deadliest days in American history are basically COVID related. So we're still, unfortunately, the cases are going down, but the mortality rate is usually 3 to 4 weeks delayed after the case goes up. I want you to be aware mortality is not the real issue. What is really worrisome is 10 to 35% of people may develop what's called the long haulers or post-COVID syndromes. And data is clearly showing it's across all demographics, regardless of age and regardless of severity of the disease you had. So if people had mild to asymptomatic, they still end up with problem 4 to 6 months later there. So this is the real problem with COVID we're going to discover there. And it's chronic fatigue. People are not being able to go up and down a flight of stairs, coughing, headaches, loss of taste. To give you an idea, Wuhan did a study in China on 1,700 patients, and pretty much 76% of patients were still complaining of some symptoms 6 months after having had COVID. I won't go into all the details. A lot of the videos are talking about that if you want to take a look at that. But the biggest problem is what's called fibrosis in the lungs, which basically, based on what happened to SARS, which is the first SARS, in 2003, 17 years later, these people still had fibrosis in their lungs. So please avoid the disease, not because of the risk of mortality, but more importantly, the long COVID is really the biggest risk there, which is 10 to 35%. So the mutation there, the UK mutation there is 50 to 70% contagious. It is in the US, so we need to keep an eye on that one, so we may have an upsurge. And what just came out is that it's perceived to be 30 to 40% more deadly if you're over the age of 60 years old. There is Dr. Fauci, I was in some seminar this week and last week, basically says the UK virus mutation is okay with the vaccine, but there's 2 more mutations that are more worrisome, one from Brazil and the one from South Africa. And unfortunately, it seems to decrease by a factor of 6 the effectiveness of Moderna and Pfizer vaccines. So people are developing a booster, but it's going to take a while before they do that, and it goes for the FDA. And so we should expect to have this virus to continue to evolve, and we should probably expect to get different boosters for different type of mutation if they become dangerous. So let's talk about the vaccine. The good news is that we're finally starting to vaccinate the world. We're as of last week at 18 million people in the US. And I think I want to reemphasize that the vaccine is very safe. The vaccine is a piece of what's called mRNA, so it's a single helix there that's being injected in the muscles that literally disappear in a matter of hours. It's been worked on for 10 years. This is not something brand new. It has amazing efficacy. And is basically what's really important to understand is that you need a 2 dose. The first dose is a primer, and the second dose is the one that's the booster. After the second dose, 12 days after the second dose, so roughly 5 to 6 weeks, depending which vaccine you take, that's when you have that rush of antibody there. So do not assume after your first injections that you're protected yet. It does not contain the virus. It does not contain any part of the virus, protein, or anything there. These are all synthetic versions where we trick the body in thinking that there is something that's a foreign protein there, and that we build the antibodies ahead of time. So the mRNA that's being injected in you basically disappears after a few hours. So I really want to understand it's very, very different than the traditional vaccine that you have that's usually a weakened virus that we've seen maybe with the flu and other things like that. The mRNA never enters the nucleus of the cell. So I know some people worry about, disinfecting the DNA. It does not. So, getting my mouse. This is important there. UC Irvine has published something that before you get the vaccination, hopefully I get it this Friday, you have to make sure you avoid taking any anti-inflammatory, anything that will decrease your immune system. Ibuprofen and acetaminophen in particular there. Because what you don't want is to blunt your immune system before you take the vaccine. And so the other thing you may want to do that they recommend is a good night's sleep. There's a direct relationship between your immune system response and if you're stressed out, if you've had lack of sleep. Exercise vigorously the day before. I'm not talking a marathon, but increasing your heart rate the day before, and that will boost your immune system before you get a vaccine. And if you have any soreness in the arm, just use an eye pack, but do not use any anti-inflammatory if you can avoid it. Of course, if you're on this medication, please go talk to your doctor. So how do you boost your immune system? Lots of publication, vitamin D, direct correlation between the severity of COVID and basically a lack of vitamin D in the blood. So lactoferrin is something else that can also boost your immune system. I've been taking lactoferrin before I take my vaccination this week. And also multivitamin B. And NAC and acetylcysteine is also a very good way to boost this. So melatonin, if you're having problems sleeping, God knows we have stress in the last 12 months, could be helping not only to help you sleep, but also has an impact in the immune system. And so it prevents cytokine storm. So vitamin D, multiple studies clearly showing there's a direct correlation between people who have severe problem with COVID and people who had deficiencies in vitamin D. So if you hear anything from this, please take your vitamin D. So this is a protocol from Eastern Virginia Medical School, and this gives you some idea of the doses. I basically take vitamin C right now, and I take, somehow I don't like the zinc, and the vitamin D3, I take 5,000 units, and famotidine I've been taking also there. If you have any mild symptoms and unfortunately you get exposed to COVID, a small level of aspirin, again against doctor protocol, can decrease maybe the chance of the blood clots, which is associated with the disease. There was some concern about should we give the vaccine to the elderly. You may remember that Norway had expressed some concern that 29 people die after getting an injection. There was a full investigation done by the World Health Organization in Norway that shows that there was no relationship between the vaccine and the death. So you should not be worried over that. And in fact, next weekend, I'm going to spend some time on the vaccination with people with special conditions. So the herd immunity is a concern. When we had the original mutation of the original form of the virus there, we thought we should reach 65 to 80% to be able to stop the virus to spread. If this UK and this mutation comes into the US and spreads, which we should expect is going to happen in the next coming months there, it has increased the threshold because it's much more contagious. Do we need to get 80% of the population vaccinated or having antibodies if they're survivors? And we know the survivor only keep the antibody for around 5 months is the latest data there. And that's a big challenge because, as you know, a lot of people have concern taking the vaccine. And I think we as CERT should really help encourage people to take the vaccine if you have an influence on people there. So as a result of this, we're moving the herd immunity target, which initially thought we may be in early September, to probably more later in the fourth quarter of 2021. And this is assuming we're able to get the vaccine supply and get it to people and get people vaccinated. So I want to do a quick reminder because I think it's important. If you have been exposed to COVID during the first 3 to 4 days, the PCR will be negative. I repeat that the PCR will be negative for the first 3 to 5 days. There's not enough viral load for the PCR to detect it. And so you have the time you're the most contagious is basically from the time of exposure to probably 3 to 5 days after you get your first symptoms there. So the viral shedding there, and this is why this thing is so contagious, is most people are asymptomatic when they're basically contagious. So what can you do to protect yourself? Again, the key is to stop that viral infection rate so you don't have that multiple reaction in the body there, which creates this anti-inflammatory and all these things like that. As far as the antigen testing, most of the antigen are not available until 21 days roughly from the time of exposure there. I won't spend too much time there, but take a look at the video on December the 4th, where I spent quite a bit of time on some of these issues there. So I want to emphasize that we're all going to be exposed. It's everywhere in the community there. That doesn't mean you have to be infected. So more and more information have shown that there's a low probability of getting infected if it's on the surface. There was an initial worry about you have to wash all your vegetables and all of these other things there. It's pretty much perceived that most of the transmission is through the air. The highest risk is the amount of viral load you get exposed to for the time period and how often there. And the closer you are to somebody, look at the ventilation environment you're in. If you're indoor with poor ventilation or worse, air conditioning that recirculate the air, you increase your chance of being exposed there. Avoid super spreading event. Anything where there's high density of people in the room is a super event. And then you can protect yourself. And protection is your mask, and I'll talk more about that. The distance and the ventilation. These are all your friends to protect yourself. And look for ventilation. Ideally, you want to get ventilation from floor to ceiling, which of course most of the ventilation is air conditioning is exactly the reverse. So more information on my November the 6th. I spent quite a bit of time on all the details, but I just picked some of the slides. Let me quickly go over this. Your risk of infection is basically a function of the amount of respiratory droplets that you get exposed to. Pretty much the further away you are, the smaller the particles are going to be, but these particles can stay in the air for 4 to 5 hours. The heavy particle, they literally drop in the first 3 to 6 feet in front of the person that's contaminated there. So when you go into an environment there, avoid being indoor if you can. Try to be outdoor. I will say get the sun, but right now it's raining. Look at the ventilation environment you're in. It turns out that low humidity is worse, like in Arizona during the summer, because the particles are smaller, there's no water in there, and therefore they float in the air for a longer period of time. This is a good link that tells you the prevalence of the virus in your neighborhood there. The higher the prevalence, the higher the risk you can get exposed. You should be aware that when people are coughing, singing, screaming, and shouting, it's like 50 times more particles in the air. So, and if people are not wearing masks, just walk away, go somewhere else there. So the CDC just changed the regulation to say that if it's being exposed for 15 minutes to somebody who was infected over a period of 24 hours. So it's not 15 minutes just one time if you see that person multiple times. That's why they perceive that 50% of the infection right now are from people you know or at home or your loved ones in your inner bubbles there. So there is what's called a Swiss cheese approach. There's not one silver bullet to stop this. It's really a combination of being aware of your distance there, washing your hands, wearing a mask, getting a vaccine if you can, avoid touching your face, rewire your brain to avoid touching your face. So let me go into some of them. Aerosol is the key for transmission. We initially thought in the format, which is the virus goes on the surface there. And, it can happen there, but it's a low probability you get infected with it. The big problem is these droplets, which if you're close to the person, is like a bullet going to your face at pretty high speed, and that's 3 to 6 feet. And then be aware that pretty much everything on the floor has droplets. So your shoes will probably be infected if you go to an area there like a store and all of that where the droplets are on the floor. The aerosol airborne is like smoke. It's literally this little particle that stays in the air. And so that's the one you really need to keep an eye on. Be aware of the ventilation. The ventilation is critical. If you go into a place that has air conditioning, they've shown that can push this particle 20 feet away in the restaurants, and people go from one place to another, much more than the 6 feet there. You should all have HEPA filters and germs, at home if you can, and then improve the air circulation there. Unfortunately, we're in the winter there, so it's a bit harder to do. But visualize that the virus is like a smoking thing, except the smoke spread. You can see at a much longer distance, and the smaller the particles, the longer it goes and the longer it stays in the air. So a loud voice is 50 times more than a small voice. So if people are in a restaurant there with big voice in the bar, that's why we had all this high transmission, because people have a tendency to speak much louder than that. So we need to change the mask. Most people are using cloth masks. They're absolutely useless to protect you. They may decrease the amount of particle that goes out of your mouth if you're asymptomatic to somebody else, but it doesn't protect you. We absolutely, I'm going to talk about what's going on in Europe and our part of the world. You need to try to get yourself an N95 or a K95, and even and then or a surgical mask. You can purchase them on Amazon. You can get them there. And so the mask, to give you an idea, are particles that are webbed. So cotton mask, you can see there's all these holes because that's how they make this into the machine. The N95 has these random type of fibers there, and these are the fibers that get caught. As the virus goes through there, it gets caught into this nest, and that's really what's critical, is to have those type of design to basically protect you. It's Europe, for example, is ditching the cloth mask. We did that because we had no mask available in March. It's absolutely essential you encourage people to upgrade their mask. And Germany, Austria, and Austria making it mandatory to basically in public use N95 or K95, which is from China. France is discouraging it. I suspect something similar is going to happen in the US. There was a comparison across 16 countries that basically showed that single layer mask, which is the cotton mask, are absolutely not protective. They protect you a little bit, but not enough. And people are now recommending to do double mask. You may have seen that with President Biden there. Very often he has a two mask. He has an N95 and a surgical mask on top of it. If you go into an environment where you think you could be exposed, like let's say to hospitals and all of that, please wear two masks just to protect yourself for those situations there. There was a very interesting study done by Duke University. And you can see that the fleece is worse than having nothing, because what happened with the fleece is that it takes this droplet, these big particles there, and break them into smaller little aerosol, which therefore they start spreading further away and stay in the air longer than they were a droplet there. So that turns out to be even worse. The best one that has the biggest efficacy is the fitted N95. It's close and you can feel the pressure. There's nothing falling out. The surgical mask is pretty close behind it, and then it drops very quickly there. You can see the cotton and the bandana and all of that, they kind of go there. So really encourage you there to get N95 or surgical. They're significantly better than bandana or basically cotton or any of the type of single mask. Do not use a face mask with a vent. They were designed for people working for dust, because those particles will go straight out through the vent. It does not protect other people. So if you're asymptomatic, you just spread it out there. If you see somebody with that mask, do not get close to them. 70%, unfortunately, of the Chinese masks have failed. So you need to really be careful where you buy the mask. If you go on Amazon, very often they mark with the destination. Korean masks have met the standards of the FDA. And so just keep an eye on what you're buying there. The other thing that was an interesting study from Johns Hopkins is that very often you can get in these masks, when they're poorly fitted there, that the transmission is behind them. It basically bounces and goes backwards. So if you have somebody in front of you in a store has a very loose mask, you don't get too close behind them because you may have some of the virus kind of spreading backwards. The mask fit is critical there. You can see this one is poorly fitted, and very often the one that have the earlobe, don't really provide you the fitness that you will have from the one that you can see goes behind your head. It's not as convenient, but it gives you a better tight fit. And you can see that you have all these particles are still spreading backwards, as I explained before, where if you have a very tight gap, you can see it's pretty much nothing coming through it. And again, I talk about this on my November 6th there. So the virus emission for an average mask is 50%, face shield is 23%, surgical mask is 65%, N95 is 90%. And so you want the highest possible. Another thing is a 6-foot rule is outdated. It's not safe enough. What you may be looking for is really a combination of that. How are people speaking? Are they shouting, screaming, and all of that, like in a bar or in a restaurant? is the ventilation. Again, keep an eye on ventilation. Is it outdoor? Is it indoor, but all the windows are open, for example? Or there's poor ventilation, like typical in the winter there, where everything is closed there. So it's called the 4Cs. What's the distance? Is it indoor ventilation there, crowd occupancy, and how much time you spend there? And to give you an idea, if you go in an area there where people are speaking a lot, like indoor restaurants in there, it's a high occupancy there, you're pretty much a very high chance of being exposed. And so again, it's not just the 6 foot, it's really being aware of the environment you're in. So mask care, change, you're supposed to change and clean it every day. Do not let it hang in your car. When you remove it, if you think you've been exposed or it was a kind of a dangerous area there, be very careful when you repose it that you don't get it on your finger and then touch yourself afterwards. So kind of flip the mask outward. If you're cleaning cloth mask, make sure you use a tiny bit of bleach in the water. N95 cannot be washed in the washing machine. I've used them in the UV when there was UV light to basically disinfect it. And please wear a mask. We did this 102 years ago for the 1918 Spanish flu, and I think we can do it again. And I have a few minutes for question, if that works.
You had a nose violation in that picture.
I know. I think he's dead by now.
I have a question about the rapid testing. What's happening with that?
So there's several issues there. Rapid testing is looking at what's called the antigen, which is after you've been exposed, the body's kind of responding to that. And unfortunately, the accuracy could be off by 30%. And so what we need to do is to rapid testing several times a week, if we get enough of those, because then you will catch it. So a lot of the colleges, for example, they're testing all their kids 2 or 3 times a week. And they're setting this up like a Coke machine dispenser there. So that works for that. The problem is that it's not really easily available. The other thing that they're working on is point of care. So you basically have a device like a pregnancy test that you can use at home, and then you can tell them if you have been exposed. A couple of those have been approved by the FDA, but they're ramping up production. It's not going to be until the end of the first quarter. So we're still having a lot of testing issues.
So the rapid test was supposed to catch it before the PCR would, because it
Not
basically
necessarily. I mean, the problem we have is that first 3 days after you've been exposed and you don't really have symptoms, is unfortunately we don't have a good way of catching that. That's why you should assume everybody in front of you could be exposed.
Well, that's what the proponents were claiming, is that it would catch it before the PCR would.
Right now, the sensitivity and specificity is 70 to 80%. And so that means that you have a lot of... the good news, if you test positive, you have it. So it's very accurate for that. But if you test negative, that doesn't mean you don't have it. That's the problem. So what they do is that they try to keep the price low and then make it so available there that you do it on a regular basis, like every 2 or 3 days, and then you will catch somebody, because the first time it may be a false negative, but the second and the third time you'll catch it. And that's what they're doing in colleges, or like, for example, in some of the sports team, that's what they're using to catch the team. But once in a while you have an outbreak, because you still have that people that get missed, and that contagious, and then they spread it out. So that's why you see these professional sports who have this bubble, and then suddenly half the team got it. So that's an issue there. So I think, unfortunately, we don't have the perfect testing available yet.
I have a question. Thank you for that, Anne and Steve. What a great question. So the Moderna specifically, you brought up as having a less efficacy with this new strain. You said 6 times less. Do you know kind of I kind of alluded to it, but what they're thinking of in terms of when they'd have a booster? I'm only asking because that's the one I got. I just got my second dose today, and I was like, no, I thought I would at least have a little bit more immunity to that.
Yeah, so it's pretty much both Moderna and Pfizer have that problem. It's nothing to do with the vaccine. It's the fact that when you look at the spike protein, what happens when they developed the vaccine in March, they all took the end of the spike protein as the attachment that goes into the ACE2 receptor. And they all developed it on that. And what happened is that the UK mutation changed that, but not in, so it's more contagious, but we still attach. The one from South Africa and Brazil, other part of the virus have mutated. And so as a result of that, the attachment of the vaccine, the antibodies we have created, doesn't seem to be as effective. And that, remember, that's in Petri dish, because that's the only thing we can test right now. They basically, and so we believe you have antibody that gets created by the vaccine, but you also get what's called T cells. And the antibody are like, laser focus, very specific target missiles. And if you slightly change the signature, what they're looking for, that's why it's not as effective. But the T cells are much broader, like more of a machine gun type of an approach. I shouldn't use that analogy there. And so what we don't know is that in the real world, when we're just looking at a petri dish for antibody, we still have these T cells that have been created by the vaccine, and they may work, but we don't have enough time and data to get that. So as far as what's happening in the U.S., we know the UK version is here and is in California. I mean, we have had outbreaks in different places, including the Bay Area. I'm not aware that we have done a genome of something that was from South Africa, but we only do 0.3% genomics of the cases. So we are blind. We don't really know. To give you an idea, in Australia, they do 60% of the cases get the genome done. And I think in the UK, it's maybe 15%. So we're not doing enough genomic testing on top of everything else we're not doing right. So as far as the booster, they are in the process of working on it. They have not even started the trials, and they have to be approved. So I wouldn't expect anything to happen for a while. And it's unclear what the FDA requirement will be if they force them to do full-blown trials on 40,000 people. Then by that time, there'll be another mutation. So I think the problem we have is that the biotech industry has stepped up and has done absolutely amazing work in being very, very responsive. The mRNA technology is unique in the sense you can get really, really fast change. And what we need to figure out is now work with the FDA so we can get them approved very quickly.
Thank you. That was.
I have another
good.
question. I'm also part of Maker Nexus, which is the fab lab out in Sunnyvale. And last April, May or so, when there was severe shortages, they were 3D printing face shields for the ER workers and working on mask designs. So you said that just having a cloth mask is not effective. What if you have a cloth mask and you put like a MERV 13 filter between two layers of cloth?
Well, that's
And then you
better.
can
And I think I had this in one of the slides. That was kind of better than having the cotton mask. It's still, the issue is the fit. You want basically no air to go in and out. Most of those masks don't really have a good fit. What it does is that it protects you if you have the virus to come out. There'd be less of a load that comes out. Your exposure of a virus coming in is what you need to worry about. And so I think the fitness, the fitting of the mask on your face is really what's important there. And then because I have some of these masks there where I basically insert a N2.5, whatever the particles numbers are. But it doesn't cover the whole area there. It covers a little bit. I think at this stage we have so much in the community there that the risk we had is so much higher than in March in getting exposed. And I think that's why you're going to hear more and more Fauci and all those people now able to speak up to basically says we need to upgrade to medical grade mask. We need to double layers. If you go to an area there, we could be at risk. And they flatly were saying to say, if you can use Instacart and all these people is basically bringing you the food to your house there, do that, because now the exposure is getting to be higher and higher. And then
Does anyone else have any questions?
John?
That was very informational and educational. Thank you, Anne.
Sure. Stay healthy. Get your vaccine.
Yeah, thanks what you do. Your videos every 2 weeks are adding a lot to our knowledge, and
yeah, and help me spread the word, because I'm doing this for the goodness of my heart, as I call it, and I try to reach out to as many people as I can.
Yeah, we definitely, I'll push that at our CCLT meeting to our county team leaders as well, so we can get some more viewing, because I think that's, I like how you are up to date on a lot of these things that we hear about, a month later, right? So we'll probably be hearing about the switching to the, the different masks, right? It's probably the next step in what we're doing here. So it's really good to hear some really updated information about what you're learning, in your profession. So I really appreciate you doing this for us. I may ask you to do it again here and there if we've had more questions, but I'm just going to direct them also to your insights there,
Yeah,
your
I mean, there's a lot on
YouTube.
the website, and I've basically
Yeah.
download the PDF because then you have the timestamp. If there's something of interest, you can find them.
Yeah, I like that too. That's pretty cool. I didn't realize you had so many, and Steve was like, "Oh, you should check it out." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, where should I start?"
Yeah,
Again,
initially I thought it was going to be for a couple of months, but we're clearly going to be a couple of years where this is going. So
Oh yeah, at least, right? Yeah.
if
Well,
we
thank
do
you.
can, I think we should have a lot more publicity and get a lot more of the general CERT membership in on it,
Agreed.
or maybe
Yeah.
have a special meeting for the general certs.
Yeah,
that'd
I
be
think
great.
I'll do that. Yeah.
Sorry, what
We
did you say?
can-
Ann?
That would be great. I appreciate that.
Yeah, no
Thank you.
problem. No problem.
Unless you have any more questions, I'll disappear because I know you have another.
I think we're good. If you guys have any questions that you think of, we can always shoot them over to Ann and get some Q&A going if needed. But yes, thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate you.
Stay healthy.
Stay safe.
Bye-bye.
Bye, thank you.
Bye-bye.
All right, let me make Larry a co-host here. That was really cool. Like, awesome. Thank you, Steve, for hooking us up. I can't, that was probably the most informative, and I've been in a lot of meetings about this stuff. That was probably the most informative that I've gotten in a really just easy to digest, very overall good picture of what I think I need to know. Outside of being in the EMS field, I really thought that was fabulous.
Yeah, what's great, she talks fast. She gets a lot of information in there. So if
Yeah.
you watch the videos, you can pause and have time to read the slide or
Yeah.
look at the references if you want to find out where she got the information.
Yeah, I speak fast too, so she was speaking my language. I was perfectly somehow.
Me too. I use the videos by 1.5 to 2x.
Yeah, right.
A question.
All right. Hi, Larry.
Hi, a question.
Dan.
We
Yeah.
came in a bit late because we were watching the sheriff. Is a video of this presentation going to be available?
Yes, I think what I'm going to do, I
There-
wonder if I can stop recording it to do it separately. No, I think I'll leave it all together. That way people can see the whole entire. Yeah, so I started recording it, and then I try to do a trial test for sending out links to Zoom because they send you a link and say, oh, here, send that out to everybody. And they could just look at the recording. And then the people I sent it to were like, yeah, they made me go do something funky. So those links weren't working. I thought that would be a good workaround. But what I think I'm going to do, hopefully tomorrow, if I'm still up and alert, is get them linked. Yes, Steve.
So what Ann did tonight is summarize a lot of things she's been reporting on for months.
Okay.
And much of it came from the presentation that she put online on YouTube on Friday. So if you go to YouTube and search for Ann Insights, ANNE space Insight, you can see all of her videos cataloged. And if you look at the ones from, what was Friday, 22nd,
Okay.
you'll be up to date. And there's also links to every topic that she's talked about, where it'll just jump to that part of the video if you want to find out what about
It must not be there. The
Right.
vaccines.
Right.
was mute us.
At some point, could you put that on chat so that I could read what you said?
I can also send it out, Steve.
That's probably
I'll
the,
work on that tomorrow. Yeah, I'll send out the link because I think, Steve, you sent it to me before, and it worked great. So yeah, Larry, I'll send that out. Hopefully, I don't know if you heard, but I got my second vaccine today, and it's Moderna, and usually it can kind of kick your butt a little bit. So I'm hoping I'm upright tomorrow. I'm slowly sinking into, but it is almost my bedtime. So but I'm hoping that so I didn't know, which what she said was I took Tylenol when I got home, thinking, oh, I'm going to get above the, the pain. And they're like, oh yeah, just take some Tylenol if you don't feel good. But then she said that, and I was like, huh, okay. So I'm just going to be hoofing it through and just dealing with it, I guess. Because I guess that wasn't the right thing to do. So I'm really glad I I saw
Talked
her at the
about that.
tournament.
Talked about that on Friday.
What was that?
She happened to mention that on Friday. So if you want to get all the info on that, check out. I'll post
Yeah.
the link to
Okay.
part
Yeah.
one of her.
In our case, we got our shots last week and no reaction at all. So
Okay.
we were lucky.
Yeah. Yeah. The first time I was, I was kind of out of it, tired and stuff. But yeah, I'm hoping that, fingers crossed, I'll be one of the lucky ones. I'm usually not, but we're going to hope tonight that I'm a lucky one.
Okay.
All right. So we are all here and we're starting a little late. Just to throw it out there, there's the Dr. U presentation at 7:30. I don't know if anyone on here wanted to jump off to go do that or what the thought process was. I know Larry and I talked about sort of the next, we've learned some information since our last recon meeting about what Marcia is kind of wanting us to have as far as signage and that, those kind of things. I'll let Larry speak on that, but I don't know if you guys wanted to cut it short tonight and watch Dr. U or what your thoughts are. Larry, do you have a lot of content? Would that mess you up?
No, I'll play it by ear. I think I should be able to cover this. I got 4 slides and I
Okay.
tend to go through them rather quickly. No problem. We'll make sure there's, my wife just poked me and said she wants to watch the other program. So at the time,
Okay. Yeah, okay.
all right, enough said. Let's put me on the show. There we go. Do you see
All
it?
right. I don't see
And
anything yet.
everyone see this? Good.
You're not sharing.
Sorry?
If you're sharing, we don't see anything.
Yeah, I don't see anything.
Okay, well then I'm going to have to go back and look at.
Make sure I got you sharing. I'm pretty sure, yeah, you're co-host, so
Go
you
to the
should
top
be
of
able
the
to
screen
share.
and share screen.
Say again?
At the top of your Zoom screen, there should be a share screen button.
Yeah, I've got something blocking that. Hang on a second. My particular image is blocking just exactly where that would have been. So let me, so let's see if I go to the top of the screen, I see everything, but I don't see share. Well, hang on.
In the bottom?
In my case, it's down at the bottom of the screen. How about that?
Yeah, I was going to say, sometimes mine floats around depending on what you're using.
Let's see what it did.
There we go.
Okay. You see anything now?
Yep.
Yep.
You see that
Okay.
you're editing a slide.
Let me do a full screen. Okay, we'll play it by ear. And essentially, this was originally going to be a very informal, do a Sunday drive, just whenever you went out to do it. But that casual independent activity, I had Victoria talk to our emergency manager, and Marcia pointed out some things that made it look much more in something that we should do as an organized event. One of the biggest reasons was that she wanted to make sure the county sheriff knew that we belonged. And listening, I was a little late, both of us this evening, because the county sheriff was presenting information on another website, a Zoom meeting, and emphasized how many people were concerned about vehicles driving slowly down their street. And so it became doubly important to follow up on the idea that if they call the sheriff knows, yeah, we know these are people doing surveys for the town. Still, the purpose identified, it turns out that private roads, the town now no longer wants us to travel unless the Marcia gets approval from the neighborhood. So what we're going to be doing is actually going around town and making sure we have record of what streets are private, and particularly what streets have this up with the text done right. But at any rate, one of the things, we went out the last couple of days and found that there are some amazingly narrow roads in the upper edges of Los Altos Hills. I would be very, very unhappy if a fire truck was coming the other way, because it's not only narrow, it's on the side of a cliff, and there are no driveways for the last quarter mile that we had. We're going to have to back down this mountain with a fire truck on our front bumper. Keep in
Is there
mind,
critical infrastructure on any of those? The private, no trespassing or narrow roads?
no, that's the point. And that's what we need to document. And so I'll show you a list of things I would like us to identify, because I just got on that road and I realized suddenly I thought at first it was a driveway, but it's a public road. And it was exactly the width of one vehicle with no shoulder. It was a surprise. If you want to be surprised, go
But there's, a
drive.
reason, there's critical infrastructure, and so there's a reason we should be going up these roads.
Yeah, because there were some houses on it. And more to the point, it was a road with a sign on it. And if you were doing one of the um, zone maps, this would have been a road that you would have just driven because it was on the map. And what I want us to be able to document is that there are some of these roads, even though they're on the map, you better be thinking about it if you're going to go up that road in an emergency, because it may not be a fire truck. It could be a tree blocking the road, and you still have to back up, in some cases, 1,000, 1,500 feet. And that's not fun to do on a one-lane road. Enough said for that, for now. Neil put together this zone group idea with the idea that we would be able to send teams out and give them a general region to look at. And we've never really done it. So one of the things this effort was to do was to say, okay, you've now gone out and looked at 3 zones. What did you experience? And one of the intriguing things is that if the zone is in what I think of as the structured town, like Summerhill Avenue or Fremont Avenue, it's an entirely different experience than going up Roos Ridge Road or some of the other roads off of Moody. We need that information. And we need to know, having done it, how long it took you to do it so that we can start getting an idea of what this task is going to be like. And in general, it was the idea, and still is, have people go out and actually learn what it's like to do these surveys.
Larry, a quick question. Bill
Yes.
was asking what road you're referencing where you were on that you were saying it was one lane, cliff.
Sunset Avenue South, north off of Burke. If you come out of town on Main Street and cross over to the Los Altos Hills and follow that road to its end, on the right-hand side at the very end of the road is this additional street sign saying Sunset, I believe it was Sunset Circle North. And that turns out to be this one-lane wide road. And I found several others. I don't have them in front of me. But that's what I want to have documented when we get done with this type of survey. You can find streets like Roos Ridge where you might pass a car being just careful coming the other way. But if a tree is collapsed on that, there is no place to pull off the road for the first quarter mile of that street. In the very first part, there are houses. Then you get up on the mountainside or hillside, and you go for quite a ways with no houses who have driveways on that street. Almost all the houses front and driveway are on a different street. So if a tree had come over the road, you'd have to back up for quite a ways. And that's not a casual thing to do. Anyway, I will be giving more information of this type, but I also expect it from you as a group, so that we know, hey, wait a minute, this isn't where you want to be type of documentation. Does that help, Victoria?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Identifying private and particularly no trespassing roads I've maintained that if it's after the earthquake and you drive down a no trespassing road, I don't care what signs you have on your vehicle, the person who's scared at the other end of the road may have a gun. My personal experience in this neighborhood was to walk up to a house one evening as doing a survey because they were changing the zoning in our area and have a gun pointed at me. And I was told, if you leave the property, I shoot. It turns out these elderly people had just been mugged the day before and they were virtually irrational in their reaction. You have to keep that in mind. Anyway, um, the time to survey what the road limitations are, gain experience. Um, One thing we did get from the town is that we can drive independently as single drivers. You don't necessarily have to have someone with you. I would argue it's a good idea, but at the same time, if your choice was either stay home or drive singly, uh, that's going to be an accepted procedure. Um, The sheriff should be told that we're doing this and we should have signs on the windows and wear our vests so that it becomes semi-obvious that we're there with a reason other than, hey, can we burglarize a house down the street? I've had neighbors walk up to me when we were doing our zone survey and ask me why I was stopped in front of their house when we were trying to establish how we would evaluate the damage if there had been one. The volunteer emergency service placards Victoria has, and we will talk a bit, oops, I'm jumping a bit. I'm going to have, as a handout, it's going to have highlighted showing where in town the zones that you're going to be asked to look at would be, the maps of the zones and forms for you to record the names of all the streets you look at and details about those streets where it's important. I put this thing about cell phones just for the fact that there are parts of the town where even if you had cell phone service, it doesn't work. And I would suggest that if you have a moment when you have finished recording a street or surveying a street and you stop to write that on the form, look at your phone and see if it says searching for service.
Larry,
Yes.
if you're collecting this data, when you ask people to tell you about that, make sure they tell you the carrier because it varies by carrier where the coverage is.
Very good. Very good. Because you're right. I've seen that happen in my own yard. But
I'm excellent with Verizon and zero with AT&T, for example, where I am.
Oh, yeah, I believe it. At any rate, the point is that that kind of information is also valuable because people tend to think, oh, my cell phone will help me, and it might not be the case. I'm not proposing using ham radio on this trip because this is, I think that's a complication if you're the only driver. And then I figured I'll have a box in my front yard, my circular front yard drive, and you just drop your forms in the box so you won't have to worry about figuring out how to send them. This is a quick summary of the things that I would look for. The real points are the last few, mostly because of how startled I was. We were out the other night, and I took what I thought was an extension of the road to find out it was a quarter mile long that I had to back up because there were no driveways anywhere. Enough said on that. So what are we going to do? In the next few minutes, I'm going to throw some questions at you. I want to find out eventually from all of the recon team members, not just you, but I'm going to use you for now as a guinea pig. Who's willing to participate? What would be the date and time that the most people would like to participate? I proposed it as a Sunday drive, but certainly it can be a Saturday, Sunday, weekday for many of us. And the reality is, find out what the largest number of people would be but I'd ask you right now, do you think it's best a Saturday or Sunday? Uh, or is there another day that makes more sense to any of you? Any comments are welcome.
I happen to be busy most Saturdays with classes.
Okay, well, that's the sort of thing I'm looking for. Would Sunday afternoons work for most of us?
That would work for me.
Same
Or
here.
anybody who would not work for? And Victoria, we can bring you along and put you out on this. It doesn't have to be, there's no radio involved. So you,
Oh yeah, I'm ready. I've been
okay,
ready
good.
for a while. Yeah. We can also do a doodle and see what everybody comes back with. Is that and that way we can look at dates and times, you know, and they can fill out the doodle, and then we can look at the group and what they are recommending for a date and time. Would that work, Larry?
I think so, and that's in fact where I would go, because I really think that I would like to get as many, if we're going to tell the sheriff that we're going to be out, it would be nice to take advantage of that, so that
Right.
it is, and for our own purposes, what I'm going to be working with you all on is going to be that it turns out there are areas of town that are extremely easy to survey. There are a lot of houses all on the street. If you think Summerhill or any of the unincorporated area between Foothill and 280, almost all the houses you can see from the street. You get up and drive some roads off of Moody, especially south off of Moody Road, and it's really hard to even find some of the houses, much less find them all lined up in a row. It can take much more time. And I go back to the CERT, the greatest good for the greatest number in the shortest time. The answer realistically becomes one of how do we combine our efforts the most effectively? So I'm preparing zone group documents. Victoria is creating the signs. We'll work out whether you pick them up at our place uh, or Victoria tries to deliver them. I don't know yet. We'll be working on those logistics. And that's my talk. Questions at this point? We have a few minutes before we switch over. Okay. Victoria, any other tasks that we need to cover?
I don't think so. I will, yeah, whatever is easier for everybody, the group, for handing out stuff. I don't mind dropping it off. It's really helping me learn my way around when you guys bring up these streets. Sometimes I know, and it's kind of cool because I'm like, wait, I know that. So I really do like that. So whatever you guys want to do, I'm more than happy to drop off some of the packets once we get that going. I did want to bring up, I was made aware of a skills refresher training this Saturday at 10. It's the resilience and psychological first aid. I sent out an email about it with a link. It's with Nick Arnett. I think some people have already taken it. I have not, so I'm really excited to be involved in that. I'm also working on, and I think I've got it pretty much down to fine art where I'm not going to mess you guys all up, but I've created not only my office hour calendar, but I've also done a CERT 2021 training calendar. So all of these trainings that we're doing, all of the links are all going to be embedded into the date and the event. You can subscribe to it, so it does an automatic update on your calendar. I've been working on that for a couple of days, and thank God for Dave and Neil, because it would have made no sense to everybody. Made sense to me, but not anybody else. So I'll be working, I have Dave testing it right now. And then once I get the A-OK that it works and it makes sense, then I'll be sending that out. But I've got quite a few things. I think I'm all ready to enter March. And then my thought was, I know it's a lot of calendars, but if you guys are interested in doing a recruiting calendar, which means we would put things on that calendar just for if you wanted to get your friends and neighbors involved in some of the town residential presentations we're going to be doing and things like that, you could pass on just that recruitment calendar to them, and they can see when classes come up, and really trying to pull in as much training as we can, especially since we've got, obviously, with this new strain coming in now, who knows if we're going to be back on stay-at-home orders at some point coming up here again soon. So I just want to kind of throw that stuff out there. As always, Larry, thank you very much. I know you're working really hard. This is a huge task. And I just want to applaud you for even, offering to do it, and me just continuously saying, okay, Larry, take it away, because it's easier said than done. And I completely understand. So, hats off to you. I did put a link to sign in for the class tonight on the chat. So if you get a chance to do that, I'm keeping track of everything. That way we can show all our awesome training. Before we go, does anyone have anything for me or Larry? So quiet tonight. Okay. That's good though. No hard questions, right, Larry?
That's right.
Yeah. All right, cool.
Okay.
I'll let you all go so you can go with your next COVID talk. Again, Steve, thank you. That was, I can't begin to tell you how fabulous that was. So I'll be pushing that information. Yeah, he put that. Yeah, he put the links in the chat for you guys, and then I can send those out as well. Thank you so much, guys. Have a good evening. Everybody stay safe and nice and cozy in your homes.
Thanks, you too. Bye-bye.
All right, thank you. Good night. Thanks again, Larry. Bye, Janice.
Bye.
Good night, guys. Good night.
Bye. See ya.
Good night. Bye, Shell.